Hey guys, another Shock Treatment Bike Report. Today we've got a Harley Davidson Road Glide, and this is a 2024 model. I'm pleased to see they've made some really positive changes for this. The shocks seem to be working okay. They're not as good as they could be, but big improvement on previous models. And in the forks, we've still got the old damper rod style fork. We've got the forks out on the bench at the moment. We'll be putting some gold valve emulators into these. But pleased to see they've finally pissed off the progressive springs. So now we've got some nice linear rate springs. These springs are quite firm. They're a 1 kilo per millimeter spring, but Harley have still put an enormous amount of preload on them. So we've got 55 millimeters of preload on here, probably a bit much. And for the weight of the bike, the weight of our rider, we're actually going to increase the spring rate up to 1.2 kilos, and we'll be running around 25 millimeters of preload. So that will make a massive improvement to the initial feel, that initial bump compliance, and it will hold us up better in the stroke on brakes and also in cornering. Now, one of the things they've done, when we say they're a damper rod fork, damper rod is basically the steel tube that has a couple of holes in it. So we have a hole here for compression and a small hole for rebound. And so when the oil gets pushed through these holes, it's just that dimension that's offering our damping resistance. And because it's a fixed dimension, basically we won't get enough damping on low speed demands, and we'll get too much on high speed demands. So the cartridge emulator is a valve assembly, and basically it will install into the top of this rod, and on a small demand the valve seat will lift a small weight, and on a large demand will lift a large weight. It's the same as a cartridge fork. And so be very careful. There are a lot of people out there that are selling valves that also try and do rebound. Now, when you've got a valve like this one here, basically the oil will get pushed through under positive pressure. Now, the only way you can make a valve to rebound is by drawing that oil back under negative pressure. Oil doesn't like that, okay? You pull a negative pressure, we start to aerate the oil, we don't get the complete damping that we're after. So be very wary of two-way valves for this application. So basically, this will make a massive transformation for the front end of this bike. One thing we've noticed with the Harleys is they still have a very flat swing arm angle, and ground clearance is always going to be questionable for our Australian roads. Now, with the flat swing arm angle, basically that wheel will be rotating in an arc, and so when we have a lowered swing arm angle, when you hit a bump, the rear movement is upward and rearward, basically in the direction of the force of the impact. And so when you have that downward swing arm angle, we get bump compliance. Once we go to horizontal, now the direction of the wheel will change, and that wheel movement is upward and forward. So with bikes like this, we'll find that the direction of the wheel movement actually opposes the force of the impact, making the bike feel that much harder. If that makes sense, it's just simple geometry. Very common mod that we do here, which is opposite to what they do in the States, is we actually make these longer, which promotes more downward angle, and it's far more comfortable for not only the riders but their pillions. A lot of pillions will complain about the rear end on these bikes. Now, one thing as well here in Australia, that we suffer problems that they don't suffer in the US. Now, with the Harleys, basically they run their pipes down the right hand side of the bike. If you've got a fat bob or a street bob, it's very common to actually scrape the headers. Now, the reason they don't have this problem in the States is because they ride on the opposite side of the road. So with your natural road cambers, when we're leaning into a right-hand corner, we're leaning into the high portion of the road. When they're leaning into a right-hand corner in the US, they're leaning into the low portion of the road. So it's possible they have over ½ an inch more ground clearance than what we have here in Australia. And that's something that should be considered in countries where you're riding on the opposite side of the road. So we'll get the front end back into this. We'll make some massive changes. The gold valve emulators are certainly my #1 pick for this style of fork. As I said, there are two-way valves out there. I would not recommend those one little bit. And so upgrading the springs, fresh oil, fresh seals, fresh valves, will have a really nice positive feel from the front of this bike. We're going to be pulling this off and measuring it up for shock absorbers, and Racetech will custom make their G3S shock absorbers for this machine. We'll put an external reservoir on there. That'll give us adjustable rebound, adjustable high and low speed compression, and obviously adjustable spring preload. But The thing I really enjoy about Racetech shock absorbers is that because they custom manufacture, they want to know the weight of the rider, how often they're two up, what type of riding they're doing, and they spring and valve the shock absorbers appropriately. And so because of that, it becomes plug and play. And I'm yet to find a shock absorber that'll outperform a Racetech shock on these Harley Davidsons. You know, there may be something out there, I've just yet to see it. Anyway, that's our Harley. Thank you very much.